Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Garf Network. I'm Eric.
And I'm Matt.
And tonight we're having a very special release party for Iron City Asskickers, a project that George Romero worked on in the late 90s and is just now seeing the light of day. I don't know, Matt, why don't you... We were both kind of wrestling fans back then. Actually, I say kind of. We were heavy wrestling fans back then. Set the tone for kind of what was going on back in 98 and maybe what George had in mind.
Yeah, so for those folks who weren't big wrestling marks back in the mid to late 90s, the wrestling industry was going through a big change with the introduction of the NWO in 96 to the development of the Attitude Era with Stone Cold and The Rock over in WWF, and the rise of ECW with their Extreme Wrestling product and backyard wrestling. Wrestling was becoming less kid-oriented and friendly and moving into a more adult-themed content on a weekly basis. And it was attracting new audiences worldwide. I mean, wrestling was the talk of the town for the latter half of the 1990s. You couldn't look at a TV guide or a People magazine without seeing a wrestler on the cover. There was promotional products everywhere. Wrestlers were on the cover of everything. I was doing DX crotch chops in high school and consistently getting in trouble for it. I was trying to give stunners in the hallway and spearing kids. I mean, wrestling permeated the pop culture, and I had never seen it like that before. And I grew up a fan of Hogan and the WWF back in the 80s, pretty much like you did. But it wasn't cool to be a wrestling fan out in public in the 80s and early 90s. But then once it really crossed over and Hogan turned heel and Stone Cold started drinking in the ring, it really took off. And it was very interesting to watch because you would be flipping channels every Monday night during the Monday Night Wars. And then if you were lucky enough to get ECW, you were kind of getting the entire wrestling landscape in the late 90s. And it seems that George kind of tapped into that a little bit with a reality-based show before reality TV really was a thing. This was before Survivor had come out.
Big Brother, things like that.
Yeah. Really the only thing close to reality TV was The Real World, that folks had on MTV, and that was popular, but we weren't calling it reality TV at that time. And wrestling was still in that era where, was it real or wasn't? There was a lot of, kayfabe, and, you had the dirt sheets that told you all the inside news, and wrestling magazines. Pro Wrestling Illustrated was a huge part of my later teen years because I enjoyed it because it actually talked about the business and wasn't really sugarcoating it like the way a WCW magazine was or a WWF magazine. It really gave you insight into the business, and stuff like that was just nuts to see how real it had become in such a short amount of time. And
I think, and that was that atmosphere that kind of set the tone for this project. And as we get into the project tonight, we've got a lot of guests that were involved that are going to be coming in and out, and it's going to be broken down into pre-production, production, and post-production elements. And we also have a very special guest at the end of the show, former WWF and WCW world heavyweight champion, Sid Justice, Sid Vicious, Psycho Sid, Mr. Sid Udy. So he was in both the WCW and the WWF during the late 90s, and we can't wait to tap into his perspective on that time, on the Attitude Era, if you will. Let's go ahead and bring on Mark Ricci. He's going to kind of tee us up here and get this party started. Where you at, Mark? There he is.
Hey, hello, fellas. Hey. Hey, listen, I want to say thank you to Garf Network for sponsoring this little shindig tonight, and a big thank you to both of you two for hosting. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Mark Ricci of Cryptic Pictures Distribution. And I also want to send out a big thank you to all in attendance tonight, far and wide. I know we have a lot of overseas folks who are up late, but hey, you all asked for this, and so now you got it. Romero Nation, I am proud to announce that Iron City Asskickers is no longer part of the Romero lore. It is now part of the official Romero canon. This whole thing began back in July of 2020 when you guys hosted the first reunion show, which was on an evening when we were celebrating George's.
It was the anniversary of his passing.
Of his passing. It was the anniversary of his passing in 2017. Correct. And I flippantly dropped the bomb during that segment that Cryptic Pictures was going to distribute Iron City Asskickers. And the next morning, I started getting requests on where to buy the darn thing. And I was like, well, I better find out who the heck owns the rights before I get myself in trouble. And now we are here tonight to celebrate the release of the Iron City Asskickers DVD. Can we actually roll, Eric, the promo ad for the DVD? We'll go ahead and show that to everybody for those who have not seen it.
Yeah, keep talking and give me 1 second.
Yeah,
okay?
sure, no problem. Just to let for all of you Romero Knights know that this DVD is packed with special features that we've been acquiring over the last 9 months. We've got the original script that we unearthed. We've got DVD commentary, news articles, a few other historical odds and ends. So it's going to be packed.
Okay.
Warning, you are coming face to face with danger.
I rip your neck off and death down your tusk.
The match beyond ignites into explosive wrestling action. The war games have begun. The ultimate wrestling event of the year. Now, the wrestling video of the year. This one's for all the money and all the glory. And these pros hold nothing back. Never seen on television before. Nowhere else can you see wrestling action this explosive.
All right.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. I should also mention, actually, that this broadcast is also going to be added onto the DVD, which is why shipments are not going out until April 3rd. So, to all of our attendees tonight, please note that, by appearing, you are giving us a permission to use your likeness as a special feature. Now, to order your copy, all you have to do is go to crypticpictures.com and click on the Iron City Asskickers link at the top of the page, or you can use the link that Eric just put at the bottom of our screen right there. And if you need some convincing to click that order button, tonight's event is going to be packed with stories and remembrances of George, many of which have not been told since this project wrapped in 1998. And I worked on this project as a cameraman, and I hadn't heard these stories until we began digging up the legend of Iron City Asskickers. Now, if the interviews that we have with our cast and crew aren't enough to get you to stick around tonight, then maybe a visit with six-time professional wrestling heavyweight champion Sid Vicious. Will and Sid does not like when people bail on him, so stick around, everybody. He's going to be sharing his stories, of course, about the wrestling industry in the late 90s, as Eric and Matt mentioned. So without further ado, I am going to turn things over to our hosts and my partner in crime, Christian Stavrakis. I'll be back later on tonight to wrap things up. Until then, everybody sit back, relax, enjoy the program, and I will catch you all later.
All right, Mark. We'll see you later.
Mark.
Okay.
What's going on, Christian?
I just want you to know, nobody's going to take this belt from me. Nobody.
Was that a vacuum cleaner belt?
It's a belt.
How's it going,
It's a
Christian?
spare.
I see you.
They sell them in twos.
I see you got the memo for the T-shirt tonight. I appreciate that.
I got the, yeah.
All right.
$5 at Shop and Save, gentlemen.
Well,
Yes.
you were you may be the only person or one of the few people that are around that were there from Alpha to Omega on this this whole project. Just you're a film historian. Walk us through this a little bit. How did this get off the ground?
It was It was an interesting time to be in Pittsburgh working in film because there were a lot of movies coming to Pittsburgh and being filmed here because Pittsburgh looks like a lot of different cities. The Pittsburgh Film Office does an incredible job of luring productions to the city because it's, they save a lot of money shooting here. And there's a vast array of locations. They can be houses, woods, whatever. So there were a lot of movies coming in the early mid-90s. And one of those movies was called The Journey. It was directed by a local filmmaker named Harish Saluja, and it's a Bollywood picture. And on that movie, I had a couple of days' work, and I met a guy named Jason Bareford, and somehow through the grapevine, I heard that Jason, he goes by JB. JB was a wrestler, and he wrestled under the name JB Destiny. And then not only was JB a wrestler, but he was also George Romero's assistant. He's like George's man Friday. And George at this time was in a rut because it was weird. It was sort of sad and ironic that how much film work was coming here. And the guy who basically invented the film industry in Pittsburgh with a couple of his buddies was sitting on his ass. And he was under contract. He was forced to write draft after draft. He was working on Black Mariah. He was working on Till Death Do Us Part, I think was one of them. But he's just, another rewrite. Okay, and he was getting paid. Then he was able to feed his family, but he was just not satisfied because he wanted to go film something. And he hadn't gotten behind a camera since, I think, Two Evil Eyes, which was like 90, 91? When was that?
Right around, I think
91.
90.
Yeah, 90.
Had to be 90. And Night 90 was being shot that same summer. And George was sort of overseeing that as a producer, along with Jack Russo and Russ Striner. But he wasn't really able to film anything. And you could tell he was getting just kind of antsy. And so he wanted to do something. And this is what I heard, and I don't remember if I'm remembering it correctly or if it was wrong in the first place. But Jerry Golod was one of the producers of Tales from the Dark Side. And I think the word was from George that he was kind of interested in something for TV. What do you got? And JB had an idea because he was an amateur wrestler. This is there's no joke that amateur wrestling, you see the videos, he did a thing called a moonsault where he flips his body into literally in half and it just lands on his back. And it looks incredible. But he's a very limber guy. He was in the Guinness Book of Records, JB, afterwards. I'll tell you that story later. But yeah, so somehow we ended up, we're going to shoot this wrestling thing. And JB said, you want to come and work with me and George? I said, hell yeah, of course I do, So we went to Nigro's Bar. And that was second. I think we actually shot the wrestling first. But we, it was so much fun to see George calling the shots again, literally, and I acted as kind of an AD, sort of a key PA, but it was just him and me and JB. So there wasn't much of a crew. But it was wonderful to watch him work. And it was one of my most satisfying experiences in life, just because I had the chance to work with George and just, we paid the extras with beer, it was great fun.
That was a question I had. Did you have was there intent to film with patrons present?
I believe that was kind of the goal, was we were going to shoot it live, and then edit in this behind the scenes footage of the soap opera bits of the wrestling troupe going through about their business, and also inserts of the crowd at the bar. And I don't know if those would have become eventually characters, like, Norm at Cheers. It's always the same four guys at the bar, or if it was a different crowd every time. I don't know. But George really had fun with it. I mean, it's all us at the bar. There were two guys on the left who were screaming and kind of joining in. They were just two guys at the bar. We didn't know them, but at one point, Lori covers the guy's mouth, like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah. I got to say my line.
Yeah. But it was fun. It was so much fun. It was just kind of, freewheeling, shooting it on video. So nobody gave a shit, we were shooting it for nothing, literally. And then we drove to Bethlehem, PA to edit the thing. JB and George and me in his van, which was an awesome trip. And we'll talk about that later too.
Can you talk a little bit about any kind of research or anything that George did in regards to wrestling?
Wow, I really don't know. I don't know how much JB and he researched it. I know JB knows the wrestling world inside and out, the professional wrestling world and the minor league wrestling world. And I don't know if George knew much at all about it. So JB may have totally schooled him and said, this is how it would be. I could be mistaken, but that was the impression I had. because JB wrote the script. I mean, it's his baby, you know. And he said it's a soap opera with wrestlers, and there's wrestling, and there's funny shit happening at the bar, and there's fights backstage, and it's great fun, you know. And it was going to be this reality TV, like we said before it existed. It was just kind of, you know, every week, what are the crazy wrestlers up to now? And George said it's got to be as trashy as possible. We got to get get some guy to flip off the camera and get like some girls to whip their boobs out, and you know, and it was like just make it he wanted to make it as extreme, because that's what I think Tina said that once. Tina Romero, she was making a film with a gay subtext, and George said, "Fuck a subtext, do it, go all the way. You know, if you're going to make a message, make it big, and otherwise people will miss it." And that's kind of what he did. He said, you know, if it's going to be about trashy people watching trashy wrestlers, let's make them all as trashy as hell. I mean, you watch at one point the Gator. They show he's in Florida watching alligators wrestling. And at one point, he pours gin into a bottle of like ragu. That's his Bloody Mary. You know, that's wonderful. That was a George thing.
Brilliant.
That might have been JB's idea. I don't know. We'll find out, I guess.
It's retch inducing though. Just the thought of it. It's just like, oh.
I know. I'm like,
needs a little more vodka here, you know.
Hey, real quick before we move on to the next segment, talk about. I mean, did you ever talk to George, or did he ever mention the wrestling doc he did on Bruno Sammartino back in the day, the winners?
Probably, I think we did. In fact, Bruno was still alive back then, and JB may have tried to get him involved or make a cameo or something. I don't know. But no, he never mentioned, though. I may have asked him about it, because I was always asking about the winners or the crazies or stuff that he shot before everything else that we kind of knew about. Yeah. Although there was any chance to talk to George, there were always, you know, stories between the lines that, you know, he would elaborate and make them better. You know, wonderful, wonderful man.
Well, we've got a couple folks in there. We've got JB in the green room. Let's go ahead and bring him on board, and he can join on the discussion. Looking good, JB. How you doing?
Hey. Gentlemen, very happy to be here. Great to see you, Matt and Eric again. Always a pleasure to see Christian Stavro.
JB Destiny.
Very happy to be here for sure, especially for such a great occasion. I want you guys
to know how glad we are for JB to be here, because he just melted snow for 5 days to survive.
But yeah, for a huge thank you to the foundation, to Garf, to Cryptic Pictures, and of course my compatriot the entire way to make the production of Iron City happen, and that's Christian Stavrakis. He's there every step of the way.
Thanks, brother. Chris. Thanks for inviting me to be part of it.
Well, JB, why don't you go ahead and talk about your initial pitch to George and getting this project going?
Yeah, it's initially George and I had just spent an extended stay in Los Angeles working on a project that never happened called Resident Evil. And George was, in my opinion only, he was betrayed by some of the people listening to different things. So it was a very down time for George with the way that project just fell apart. And we had extended our stay in LA. What was supposed to be 6 weeks turned into 3 months. And when we got back to Pittsburgh, we both took a little bit of downtime. And so I think we flew back on a Friday. And so I didn't go into work, which was his house, until Monday. When I walked in on Monday morning, most of the time George is writing or distracted. But I could tell then that he had something on his mind, and he was just waiting to talk to me about it. And he said, we should do a wrestling thing. And of course I was in my mid-20s. I was like, of course, yeah, we could do that. I could do that, blah, blah, blah. And he was dead serious about it. He's like, we should do a wrestling thing. He said, Chris and I are going to Cannes. So let me know what you come up with. And so I was like, yeah. So at his townhouse in his office area, which was a sunroom, I used his laptop, and I banged out these pages because that was easy to me because I was involved in the industry and the independent promotion at the time. So it came kind of quick. It was less than a day I wrote these 19 pages, and I had to fax them to his hotel at Cannes. I included the memo. It's like, all right, I talked to Declan and Richard Matheson. Oh, yeah, by the way, I'm attaching these pages of the wrestling thing. Let me know what you think. And he called back. The next day, he's like, I love it. We'll shoot it when I get back. So that's when things got set into motion in a quick way. First person I called was Jim Miller, the promoter and owner of PWX. And the second person I called was Christian Stavrakis. So, because he and I had been working on a couple of other projects, big time projects in Pittsburgh, but I knew he knew the crew and the production side of things to get people involved. So I called him and I called the promoter, and we slowly brought things together. He got back to town, and the production happened in a quick way, very short order.
How did you go about casting folks from the wrestlers to the extras? What was that process like? Did you call people you knew, or did you have auditions?
No, I called people I knew. I was very close with Gator because he and I had been in the same promotion. We were running shows every 2 weeks, and there was a lot of guys in the locker room. We'd have anywhere between 3 dozen and 4 dozen wrestlers in the room, but Gator and I always got along. And so I thought about him instantly just because of his stature and his size, and because of our kind of comfort level with each other. I knew that he was one. Other guys, when it came to like Brian Anthony, the big bodyguard, he's built like a Greek statue. So I knew him. Boomer, I knew because we were close friends. The announcers, Doc and Spiffy and Buff Wilhelm, Mark Wilhelm, I knew them, and they were all good. So the wrestlers I could handle. Now, Spiffy brought in some of the other people, but aside from that, yeah, I could handle those guys. I could handle the promoter, the ring, the venue, the location, and
so it was a no-brainer. Everything was there.
Right. It was kind of turnkey, and then Christian brought in much more of the production people. By the time we were shooting the match, there were 4 people on camera, 4 people holding camera. Christian,
you, me, Mark, and
John McKee.
Somebody else. John McKee.
Yeah. So,
forgot.
But George was holding the camera the whole time. And it worked out well. We staged the match at a live event that PWX was throwing anyway. So it worked out pretty well.
JB, did you pregame with George about any wrestling? What was his comfort level with wrestling in the late 90s?
Well, George had never seen one of my matches, but he knew that I would competed on the circuit. Andrew, his youngest son, had come out to see my matches at the time, but Andrew was very young. So he felt comfortable around the wrestlers, especially Gator. He and Gator hit it off right away because they're both just relaxed kind of individuals, both larger than life kind of guys. So they became instantly friends. So,
because they're both 6'3".
Yeah, I know, right? And they've always been from a very early age larger than their contemporaries. So that's why they had a comfort level with each other.
Do you think it was ultimately just your connection to the wrestling industry that made Romero think about such a project? Or, I mean, is that what started all that? Yeah,
I cannot take credit for that. No, It was George's idea the whole way. And he turned it up. He turned the intensity up because what we did with ICA was so much crazier than what even WWE was doing at the time or anybody else was doing on television. So yeah, it repelled and repulsed some of our closest friends that we showed as soon as we had a copy.
That was kind of the goal.
Yeah. George didn't care. He thought it was a riot.
It was like George's take on the Attitude Era.
Exactly. And it predated the Attitude Era by about a month or two, and then WWE went crazy. But at the time, ICA was ahead of its time.
And do you remember what was the actual shooting dates? Do you recall?
Oh,
Or
wow.
roughly. Oh no!
You're talking about a production where we all texted each other and said, "Did none of us get a picture of us working on this thing?" We
right.
didn't. But we realized somebody took a picture of JB and George and Mark and me, but we don't know who it was and who ended up with that picture. So somebody's got a picture, but we don't know where it is.
Yeah.
It was it was that relaxed. It was just kind of like, let's go have fun. It wasn't like, let's keep track of it.
Yeah, and we didn't have the foresight to take pictures at the time. So
what I do remember when we came back from editing, the day we got back from Bethlehem, a tornado had touched down on Mount Washington. That was like the only tornado to touch down in the city of Pittsburgh for like 100 years. So that's, if you could track that newspaper down and find the tornado, you'll probably find it around that time.
Mount Washington tornado. All right, we'll get back with you.
Yeah.
Google News.
Yeah, it can't be too many Google articles about that.
Right.
No. Okay. Well, and it seems like you entered the project at kind of breakneck speed. You completed it. You edited it. Then what? What happened? Did it kind of lose steam? I mean, what, you guys just kind of move on? Other things happen? What happened with the project?
When I say that people were repelled or repulsed by this, that's not hyperbole. It's like, people really did not like it. They're like, have you lost your mind? This is crazy. And now it seems kind of pedestrian. But at the time where we were showing it to people, we would have screenings at George's house, and George and I were the only ones laughing. Everybody else was just stunned, like they had just been in a car accident.
What have you done?
Yeah, you can't put this out there. Yeah.
They just, and all around just didn't get it, didn't find it funny, found it offensive, just all of the above kind of thing.
I'm assuming a lot of the people watching it were not into wrestling and didn't understand that that's what wrestling was becoming.
And Matt, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. So George was, and
again ahead of his time.
Together, ahead of his time. Yeah, Chris said it. I know.
Well, why don't we go ahead and bring in Mr. Brian Anthony? He played a bouncer in the bar scene, correct?
Bad boy Brian Anthony.
Punch it, scream, just act like a total fucking asshole.
Hey, Brian.
Brian.
How you doing, Brian?
It's funny. It's fucking hard.
This is like Kentucky Fried Movie.
Brian, you look good, my friend. Right on. Yes.
1 minute.
He's watching Breaking Bad.
It's always it's season finale. Don't spoil it. All right.
Anyway, Brian was there's a bar sequence, so it cuts back and forth to the guys watching at the bar, and Brian is the bouncer. There's a guy. I think the guy who actually freaks out and starts screaming was just some guy at the bar, right? And we just said, go and act like you're freaking out. And Brian's gonna grab, like the bouncer, grab you and throw you out. And so we just found some drunken ninja, and Brian lifted him off the ground and just moved him out. It's a quick shot, but it's like, Jesus, he picked that guy up like 3-4 times.
Because at the time, I'm sure he still is, but at the time he had a total bodybuilder, power lifter kind of look. I mean, the guy was chiseled. And so it's like, you
could see it, man. He dashes into frame when that guy starts hollering, and you can see his arms are like, Jesus, God. And then he picks that guy up like he's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in addition to that, we are going to welcome now a lady who needs no introduction to the Romero world, Miss Lori Cardale. Lori, how are you?
Hi, guys. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Lori.
Thank you for joining us.
This is great.
It's hard to believe it was last summer when you joined us for the Day of the Dead commentary, and it was right before we did the Iron City Asskickers commentary. And at the time, you did not have much of a recollection of your experiences. And I'm wondering, in the interim, have you have you been able to recall anything regarding the production?
I don't know. Well, you know what? I do remember. Wasn't John Larry Myers part of it too? Was he there, Chris? Was he?
Larry John Myers was he at the bar? He was.
I think so. Didn't we do that dance around the bar?
No. That was a different picture. This one was where you had you're an announcer at the bar. Yeah, and cutting back and forth. And there was a fight breaking out around us, at the bar was George and me and Kyra and a bunch of other people sitting just acting like. Yeah, but then there were two guys who really sort of got into it. They were just hanging out at the bar, and you had to sort of control them.
Right. I do remember, and I remember thinking, "Oh my God, I am not going to be good in this. I hope I can do this. I hope I can do this."
Fantastic.
I don't know. Sue said to me, she saw it, and she said, "Who was that woman in it?" And somebody said, "That's Lori." So I can't wait to see it again. Yeah.
She almost did a spit take. She was like, "That Lori? Where was Lori in that?" I never rewound it. She was like, "That's Lori." Yeah.
Lori. Many looks, many different looks, and many different ideations of characters in my lifetime. But no, I just remember Jason, and I remember when George asked me to do it. He was. It sounded like a really fun thing to do. So I remember wanting to do it, being a part of it. And of course, George asked me, and of course I would do it, whatever. So happy to be a part of it. And the whole wrestling thing is all part of my past anyway, because of my father, and Bruno Sammartino. All those guys are big family friends. They were, they'd be at our house. And so wrestling is always a big part of my life. And as a matter of fact, my son now is, he just, directed a documentary for A&E, and he has Stone Cold Steve Austin. He just did a doc on him. So that's.
I tell you what, his documentary on Andre the Giant was excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, good job.
Really good.
I wish my dad knew. It was just a coincidence that he was doing the wrestlers, but that was. My dad died right. He knew he was doing Andre, but it was just kind of cool. It's funny. It comes around in one big circle.
Oh, yeah. Life is a big circle.
It sure is. Yeah, this is so exciting, though, that you guys, that it's going to be released again. I think people are going to really enjoy it, and I can't wait to see it again, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm happy for you.
Matt, Eric, the one thing that I would be remiss if I did not point out that the saloon scene that Lori was the ringmaster for, that was all, aside from maybe a half a page, that was all unscripted. And so Lori is surrounded by a whole bunch of maniacs, and she was controlling it the entire time, trying to rein in these lunatics.
Like tonight. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, Lori actually had dialogue. And so she's looking at the camera and saying yes, and Boomer Payne, and we're just going crazy. So then there are two guys, like I said, there's a bunch of guys that are just at the bar drinking that don't know what this is about. So she's trying to wrangle them and do her dialogue at the same time. It's like, shut the fuck up, because you'll see it. It's funny. We finally got those guys to settle down a little bit. I think I bought them a beer.
Brilliant. It's Lori, especially. I cannot imagine what that was like. Had an idea of where we were going. And it's not like anyone was watching the match. The saloon stuff took place before the match even happened, but everyone's like responding to it. So it was genius on your part.
Oh, thank you. I can't wait to see my genius.
Well, my favorite part was that the guy at the beginning, the first announcer we see, has a microphone with a flag that says ass. And Lori says kicker, but the other guy's ass is great.
Oh, good. Oh, I can't believe this is so cool. We've all been connected for such a long time. It's just amazing, isn't it? I mean, I just remember, Jason, you were living at George's house, and you were watching the kids once in a while, and of course Christian and I are very close friends, and then there's Matt. It's wonderful, it is a family thing. It's just I get very, moved by it all. Really.
Yeah.
Please don't
That's
start
what I
crying.
that's my.
If you cry, I'm going to cry.
Oh yeah, we're all done. That's my line that I tell everybody is that George's greatest gift to us was each other.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Yeah. God, I remember that living room. Just all the stuff that happened in that house, and the dinners, and the doing like voiceovers for Day of the Dead when they were making we did some kind of commentary, and just so much creativity that we were all a part of. It's just wonderful. Yeah, Jason, it's so good that this is happening, and with Cryptic Pictures, that's talented group of guys here.
And still, I mean, how is it that wrestling permeates all that we do? It's how does it touch everything? It's amazing. It's
I'll tell you what,
resilient.
though, I remember back in like the mid '80s, Fangoria started to do a couple of wrestling articles, and I think the horror fans were like, "What the?" They shut it down pretty quick, but they spun off another magazine in the same time too, like Wrestling Illustrated or something.
I have a theory.
Okay.
Because George, of course, grew up reading comic books. I grew up reading comic books. And pro wrestling at that point was the closest thing to larger-than-life characters doing superhuman things. It was good guys versus bad guys, and they settled things physically, like comic books. So I think that's, for a comic geek like me, that's why I think I gravitated to pro wrestling, and maybe that's why George did as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember when I was at CMU, Carnegie Mellon, I had a professor, Joel Walker, and he thought it was, he was a mime, but he taught acting. He was just a genius, really a mentor of mine. And he talked about wrestling as being such a high form of theater. It is, obviously, but, little did we know it would just progress into this massive business, because when it was done in the olden days when my dad was doing it, it was like it just felt so black and white, and it was tamer.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of steroids, I think, were being used either. But I just I don't know how I got. Me too. Wrestling has been a part of my life ever since I was a little girl. We used to go to Channel 11 and watch Ringside Rosie and all the wrestlers, and like I said, all those guys, Haystacks Calhoun and Crusher Lazowski, just God, it's so cool. Yeah, it is a really fun thing.
We just lost Jumpin' Johnny DeFazio.
Oh yeah,
last little bit of time. So
speaking of which, Jewel Walker just passed away recently, didn't he?
He did. Yes, he did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jumpin' Johnny DeFazio just passed away. Yeah, that was sad. That was very sad.
Was that a wrestler?
Yes.
Was that what?
Sorry, I didn't watch wrestling.
You don't know Johnny DeFazio?
I was watching horror movies.
Christian, what do you remember about the script? You said that Laurie's part was scripted.
I remember at the bar, Laurie actually had a side to refer to, but the rest of us were just catcalling and having fun. We were drinking real beer. We're sitting around smoking cigarettes and drinking beer. Poor Laurie has to act, and the rest of us are just farting around. But for the wrestling match, I think JB, you had the match, of course, very well scripted between you and Gator, and then the action around the match was scripted as well, like going back and breaking into his place and hitting him with the hammer. That was all scripted. I remember that.
Yeah, correct. And Laurie was, because it was like a watch party taking place at the saloon, and so Laurie was talking to the commentators that were at the event, and they were supposed to be like speaking back and forth as if they could hear each other. So that early part of leading into the match at the saloon, yeah, that was scripted.
Yeah, I do remember memorizing and working on some, a lot of stuff. and trying to be like a broadcaster.
You were beautiful and wonderful, and he is so doggone talented.
Oh, thank you. I think I had like short red hair or something, didn't I?
You
like,
did.
Yeah.
It was very short hair.
Yeah, yeah, I remember because when I moved back to Pittsburgh, I didn't have to worry about like having my hair a certain way. So I came home one day and I had real short white hair, and my son was little, and I came home and he started crying.
No way.
It was like child abuse. No, but I just remember, I didn't have to worry because I wasn't. I mean, George asked me to do this, and I did a few things. But when I moved back to Pittsburgh, I was raising my kids, and came here to do that. And so I could just do whatever I wanted with my hair. So it was many different colors in those days. My husband liked it. Yeah, he thought I was a different woman every other week.
You're beautiful then. You're beautiful now.
What he said.
Well,
but another nice thing about that bar scene, for me in particular, was that George is in it. So George is sitting at the bar. He and I were standing at the bar for an hour, just kind of, being Abbott and Costello. Yeah, that was great fun. While poor Lori's trying to wrangle these.
We did a snowy night the night we shot it. Do you remember? When did we shoot it?
No, I want to say it was summer. JB, your brother just texted that it was June. The tornado was June 2nd, 1998. So we must have shot the rest in May. So it had to be sometime in May.
Because I think I faxed him the script while he was still in France. I think it was like the March 26th, something like that. So we shot it pretty quick as soon as he got home. Yeah.
Wow.
How did this all come about? I mean, Jason, this is so cool that this is happening. I mean, I'm just so happy about that. Yeah.
Well, it's the community, the family that George built made this all completely possible.
Yeah.
Because he supports the people that he really likes and he likes to work with, and sometimes he has more patience than I would, and he certainly had a great deal of patience with me. And so when he asked me to come up with a wrestling idea, and he sold and he bought into the story, he said, "Yeah, we could do this." He didn't have to do that. He could have just stuck to rewriting and doing stuff for the studios, which he was also doing at the time. So this was really, it just shows how big his heart was and how inclusive he was with people that he cared about.
Well, he also knew you were talented. It's not like you just came, he knew that you had an ability too. So he would nurture that in all of us. And
he really did. He really did. I think Bomba said it best. It's like, you don't work for George, you work with George.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's true.
Yep.
Nailed it.
JB, talk about how much it had to do with maybe his hunger just to get behind the camera again.
Yeah, he used to joke because he was a member of the DGA and DPs had their own unions, stuff like that. That as a member of the union, he wasn't allowed to look through a camera on set. He wasn't allowed to. He could see the video assist and things like that, but he wasn't allowed to set up shots and things like that. Whereas he jumped in full throttle with ICA. He's like, okay, let's get cameras, and he was holding a camera the entire time. So it's not like he had passed it off to somebody else or anything. He wanted to hold a camera the whole time. So and he hadn't done that in years, perhaps close to two decades. So,
I wonder if he even had a chance to do it afterwards very much,
he didn't
probably not. That's a very strict thing, no matter where you are. I mean, Canada has their own cinematographers union and directors guild. And that's it depends on the country, but I know it drove Ridley Scott crazy when he came here. And he said, "What do you mean I can't look through my camera?" Because at the time in the UK, you could do both. And maybe you still can, I'm not sure. But it's frustrating as hell because you want, that's why you see these little viewfinders that they're trying to look at the shot and hope that the DP gets what they're looking at, But it's a union thing.
It wasn't SAG either, so I was probably like working.
You didn't do anything.
No, I didn't do anything wrong.
Randy Kovitz might be watching.
Well, we've got
I hope he
a.
is watching. Randy.
Yeah, it was great. It was a good friend of mine.
We have another couple of guests that we want to bring on board that were involved. We've got. Let's see. Is Spiffy still in the green room? Did we lose him?
Nope, Spiffy.
There he
Spiffy's
is.
there.
I'm here. Spiffy doesn't look any different.
I know, right?
And then we need to bring in Mr. Mark Buff Wilhelm as well. What's going on, Buff?
There he is.
How is everyone?
Are you there, Buff? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. Good to see you.
These are the three. What we have are the three voices to tell the story in ICA. We have Lori, Spiffy, and Buff. All of them were telling the narratives that the action was not. So it's outstanding because they all have something in common for this.
Now, poor
I was
Buff
the guy
was
holding
one
the other
arrested.
ass sign where he had kickers.
That's right. Yeah. Lori had kickers. Buff had ass.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
And
and my
Spiff.
ended rather quickly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I remember doing Foley for that. Remember, Gator hit him in the head with a bottle, and so George, you and I and George were recording sounds for the bottle splashing, and that was so much fun.
And making
that hurt.
That was George. Yeah, whenever you hear when he bites a Buff on the head, and you hear that's George.
Mm-hmm.
That was George.
Yeah.
Well, George's I guess whoever the PA was forgot the case of breakaway bottles.
Oh yeah, not for
And
that.
you were mentioning earlier about Gator pouring stuff in the. Gator had said, "Oh, I got a vodka bottle in the car."
That's right. He hit you with a real bottle.
And no one questioned Gator had a vodka bottle, and
Yeah, it was
because
a glass.
we were already like hours behind schedule, if you guys remember. So the PA that was supposed to bring the breakaways forgot them, and it would have been at least another hour to get them back to the east. So we couldn't wait any longer. When Gator's like, "I got a bottle in the car," of course we did vodka, and he had to finish it. He actually, George tried to show him how not to hit me with the bottle. And he tried, but he kind of hit me with the bottle anyway. Luckily, it did break. But yeah, that hurt.
Hey, we're gonna try and bring Brian Anthony back in real quick. Let's Brian, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, good to see you, sir. Sorry about
How you doing?
earlier.
Sorry about that. I was having, I don't know, issues.
Yeah. Well, Brian, Buff, and Spiffy, talk about how you guys got involved in the project. How were you first approached?
Well, I was by JB, who I wrestled with, but I've known well before Iron City Asskickers. As far as wrestling, we go way back even before PWX days. And he had asked me if I wanted to play the role of a bouncer in the movie he was doing with George. Of course, I was honored because George Romero, everybody knows, George Romero. And so I was honored. It was it was a fun experience.
How about you, Buff?
Again, it was connected with Jason, and I knew all along because he and I are close friends and have been since back then. And there were many days where I would be over at George's house with Jason, so I knew as this was coming together and he was writing the script for Iron City Asskickers, I kind of knew about it all the way along. Oh, fine. JB.
Who's Jason?
So, yeah, he just said, "Hey, I got a spot for you. You want to do this part?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. I'll do whatever you need." Another part of my job that night, if you guys remember, was lubricating the fans. Because once my shot was over, we had to. George wanted the fans drunk, so Iron City would provided cases, 40 or 50 cases of beer, and it was my job to make sure the crowd was drunk as much as we could get them and allow them to drive home. So yeah, we had to pass out beers to make made sure the crowd was tuned up for the show. And from the crowd standpoint, our live event crowd knew JB and Gator were actually part of the same stable. They were wrestled on the same side. So they had to hate each other. So it was kind of a unique experience for the crowd because they needed to participate in the match, JB against Gator, not them fighting together. So it was kind of a fun thing for our crowd to do too.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sean, were you an
And
actual?
Spiffy, he got to hang out with Doc all night.
Spiffy, were you an actual announcer for the promotion?
I was, Eric. So I had kind of a perfect storm of being involved with ICA. So I just broke into the wrestling business. So I was brand new, barely legal, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and just wanting to do anything I could do to be a part of the wrestling business as a whole. So I had just started helping out with the local group that was involved in PWX. Had a weekly television show that they taped as well. So I was involved in doing some of the commentary work and some of the backstage interviews as I was learning how to be a wrestler as well. So I just started working on the television side of things for the TV. So I got a chance to work with Jason with that because he was involved with his background in putting that television show together as well. So it kind of fell into place there. And then again, as a young guy, just trying to be involved, getting a chance to meet George and work with him. And I think Jason might have said it, like George works with you. So Jason mentioned we had a scene where we needed some girls to come out and dance, and me being the young guy on stage on location. Hey, Spiffy, do you know anybody that you can get? And that's me calling my little sister and a couple other of her her friends to come and be dancing girls to do some of the extra work for the scenes there. And even George asking for input on how do you want them to come out, or how should we get them to, choreography. Like he was very good about letting a guy like me who had no business working with somebody like George Romero feel very involved in the project. So it was, for me, it was a great experience. And then obviously getting to do the play-by-play for the match itself, getting a chance to work with Lori. It was great. I wish we had a chance to follow up on that because I think Jason said it. It was one of those things that might have been ahead of its time. And we saw a lot of those aspects that we kind of had with Iron City Asskickers kind of morph into what the WWE and professional wrestling kind of did for years after that. But we, like George has done his entire career, he was a little bit ahead of his time. So we're excited. 20 years later, you guys get to see a baby-faced, a little more bloated Spiffy at that point on the screen.
Yeah, George was ahead of his time, absolutely. And every film he's done, honestly, even like with Day of the Dead, it took a while for the audience to really get it and move with it. It's the same thing. It's just yeah. That's why his work, it just appreciates with time, and thank God for the archive now, and we can all keep his vision alive, and how lucky we all were and are now.
Yeah, he was definitely passionate and dedicated to his craft for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And let's bring another cast member on. Gator himself has joined in.
Gator, you're muted.
Gator.
How you doing, guy?
That's probably a good thing.
At least he figured it out faster than I did.
How you doing, Gator?
Gator, what's up, buddy?
Gator.
I'm working right now, so I can't be on too long.
Well, let's go ahead and get your take on your experiences. Tell us what's on your mind about Iron City.
Well, it was a great experience. I'll say that. It was probably the first time I worked with George. I mean, we did other stuff together, but I think that was the first time, wasn't it, JB?
Correct.
And but I knew him before that because we used to, hang out with JB, and JB was always with him, so we would hang out with him also. What a great guy he was. Always a joy to be around, always in a good mood, upbeat. But when we worked with him, one thing about him, whatever I did, like I was a nobody with somebody famous like George Romero. Whatever you gave, he would take any idea you gave him and think about it and may use it. It didn't matter who you were. He really would like use what he put anything that you gave him input to and use it. Not everything, but a lot of stuff that I would say, well, what if we did this? He'd be like, yeah, that sounds great. Do that. So he was very open to anybody giving suggestions, meaning he was the top dog there, but he would take any kind of, input from anybody.
Mm-hmm. So we have another guest we want to bring on, Mrs. Ruth Dorst. How you doing, Ruth?
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Ruth, welcome.
Hey.
And Ruth, you were brave enough to participate as one of the dancers in Iron City Asskickers.
Yes. I actually met this group through Sean. He was dating my friend, and she said we went to go watch him do this show, and he came over and said something to her. She said, hey, they need dancers. So I'll do it. I was 18, 19 years old. So I jumped up there and said, well, what do I do? I didn't know who George was at the time. I never watched wrestling. I was just there kind of experiencing this thing that was being created. And he said, well, just, you three girls go over there, dress like you're from the swamps in Florida and make a little dance. So that's what we did.
Incredible. And did you ever get a chance to see the final product? Or
I haven't, no.
Excellent.
I'm excited to see it.
You're in for a treat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Christian, you need to send a courtesy copy to everyone involved.
We'll leave that to Mr. Ritchie.
Yes, we'll put that one on him at the end.
We'll make sure you get one, Ruth.
Yeah, that was fun. And then after that, they called me. Jason actually called me back and said, we need a body double for Sadie Spank. Can you just wear this outfit and walk around the stage so we have you in the background? So sure, why not? And like I said, I didn't know who George was. I didn't really watch wrestling. And I said, well, who's directing this? Who's running the show? They pointed to George. I walked up and said, well, what do you want me to do? He said, walk up to that guy right there, JB Destiny, and kiss him on the mouth. So, okay. So I walked up and grabbed him, and that was our first kiss. And we dated for 3 months after that. I think George knew what he was doing. He was blocking where Sadie bit his tongue off, but who knows?
And how long did the shooting of that match take between Gator and JB?
No, the match was one take. We
Really?
did a couple of inserts in and out, but when it comes
that
to
was about what, 10 minutes?
Yeah, in front of the live crowd, it was one take.
Good.
We had
you redid a couple of the flips, right? A couple of the
the
inserts.
match time was probably 15 minutes, maybe.
Yeah,
10 minutes.
Yeah, it's the run-in where Gator first chokeslams me on top of the chair. We did that twice, but that was but for the match itself, once we got going, and then we did a couple of inserts later on. But the match from curtain to curtain was one take.
That's incredible. I would assume you would have put a few hours in to get all that footage. That's great.
Because a live event was happening that same night.
Yeah.
And so this was like the first match, but then everybody was there to see the live card. They weren't there to watch us.
Right.
And so we had to put it on early in the show, and then the rest of the show went on.
Amazing.
Nice.
Well, we hate to run everybody off. We have reached the 8 o'clock hour.
Like
So we've reached
Brian Anthony probably wrestled on that card.
He did. Yeah.
Did he?
It's really nice to be here with you guys.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for showing up and
thank you guys
supporting the release party.
Of course.
Yeah. And we'll get with Mark about courtesy copies for everyone.
Yeah.
Especially you, Ruth, so you can finally see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really.
Wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
All right, guys. All right, guys. Thanks everybody for coming on.
Guys.
See you, Chris.
Thanks a lot.
All right. So who do we got coming up next, Matt?
So up next, we've covered pre-production, we've covered production, but now let's get into the post-production, and we are going to invite on some editors. Sean Tiedemann will be joining us. Hi, Sean.
Hey, what's up, guys? How are you?
Good.
And good. Happy to be here. And we got Scott Crecia should be joining me.
And there's there he is.
How you doing?
Hey, Scott.
How you guys?
Hello.
Hey, welcome, guys.
What's up, Scott?
How you doing?
Good, bud.
So let's talk about how'd you guys edit this feature that was shot in a day and a half? I mean, how did you put it together, and did something so short pose any problems, or was it a pretty easy run?
Well, it was we did 2 or 3 days of all-nighters. That's what we had to do because out of those 2.5 days we had to also capture all the footage. There was a lot of raw footage as well, and there were no graphics made or anything, and they wanted to leave with a finished product. Mm-hmm. So they came to, at the time, Scott and I just graduated college, and we were in a cramped apartment, and it was like the 3rd floor of an attic. I think I lost you guys.
We're here.
Okay, I just things disappeared, but yeah, we were in the 3rd floor of my apartment, and it was super cramped, and yeah, it was pretty incredible experience of just doing what we had to do, basically. So we were huge fans of George. We met him in 1998 at the Fangoria Weekend of Horrors. Scott and I edited a promo reel for him for his big appearance, and I remember George being so humble that he arrived at the convention, and he was with Jason, and we met him beforehand, and George went to the restroom or something. And I remember Jason saying to us, like, George doesn't think anyone's even going to care that he's here. I think it was something like that. Well, needless to say, when it came time for George to take the stage, the auditorium just filled up. Like, people were on top of each other. It was so packed, and they just cheered and hollered and yelled the whole time. And we ended it with his name coming up and like a huge explosion, like Michael Bay, and the audience just went like nuts, and it was crazy. And that's how we wound up getting the job to do this. So it was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you let us in a little bit on the post-production progress. Talk a little bit about that, cleaning up the image and everything, and how the VHS or recapturing the I guess it was high 8, digital 8. Is that what you said it was?
Yeah, Super 8, right?
No, I thought it was 3/4.
Oh no!
You know what? It's been such a long time, we don't really remember. But I believe it was 3/4 or Betacam. And I remember George bringing the tapes to us the first day, and we didn't even have a deck to play them. Mm-hmm. And we're like, well, we don't have a deck for this format. So we ran out to a friend of mine in New York, or not New York, in Allentown, who had a studio. And I called him up, and I'm like, please. I'm like, George Romero is at our place. We need a deck. And I like drove over there and was able to get a deck off of him. But it was all on video. I want to say it may have been Betacam. I don't remember. It was such a long time ago. And all that whole video thing has changed so much now. I mean, you don't even have tape anymore. You use cards and memory cards. So, but like I said, like what Sean said, it was like nonstop. Like I remember, like I had a day job. I don't know why, but I did. And I worked. We edited. And then I went to my day job, and then I just came back to the studio and just kept working. And then he took a break, and then we just kept like going through it and doing breaks and stuff until we can get it all done. So
the one thing, George never took a break.
No.
He was up from Friday evening until we left on Sunday. He never took a break. I did. I definitely did.
Yep.
But, Stavro did, but not him. Not him.
No, George never took a break. He would be down there like the next morning with a shot list with a whole list of stuff ready to go. And this is what we need to change. This is what we need to do. And yeah, he was a machine like that.
yeah, it was pretty amazing going from the Fangoria Weekend of Horrors, being a huge fan of George Romero, to a few weeks later having him sitting next to you in your cramped apartment, and that was pretty incredible. I remember originally Jason we didn't know if George was going to come. It didn't seem like he was going to come. Didn't seem to even be a chance of that. And Jason called us the morning they were leaving, and I hear George in the background like, "Oh, I got to get my whatever," and we're like, "George is coming?" And Jason's like, "Yeah, he's coming with me." So Scott and I think, just vacuumed quick, and that's all we could do to repair. So it was like
I remember the van. I think you guys came in like this big conversion van. I remember just like looking out the window and seeing this big conversion van pulling up, and then George was looking and like locking eyes with George, and I was like, "Oh man, George Romero's out there."
Yeah, what was interesting is George brought in some CDs from the van, and he had Dawn of the Dead with him and a Night Riders cassette of the soundtrack. So I always wondered, Jason, did George listen to that on the way over? Was he actually playing the soundtrack to his own movie while he was driving over? I think that's super cool. So
Yeah. No,
I don't know if that's something he really, did or not. So it was pretty cool.
And we listened to them on the way up. We definitely listened to them on the way home. Yeah, that was constantly in the background because we had Christian Savrakis with us as well, and he is such he has such an ear for the soundtrack that he wanted to hear it, loved to hear it, wanted to talk to George about it, so maybe it wasn't George's idea to listen to the music. It was Stavros.
Jason, do you remember how small and cramped the quote unquote edit suite was, which was really just a bedroom in an apartment?
Yeah.
And it was just totally like small and cramped. And I remember like we didn't really use it too much as a studio. So what happened is I had to like run out and buy an air conditioner to put in the window because we didn't have one. And it was like 1,000,000 degrees in there. And then of course, like I just bought like a used one because, we didn't have a lot of money. And of course, it didn't even work. And I was just like, I don't even know why we ran the thing because it was just blowing hot air in there. But it was just ridiculously cramped in that little studio.
It was very small. Right.
I mean, it was like a 5x10 room. And we had just had all this gear in there. It was crazy.
It was like the sloped roof.
Yep, the sloped roof. Yep, I hit my head on that 1,000,000 times. I know. I actually remember like when you went out into the hallway, this roof was really sloped there. And I can remember like every time George would go outside or something, he would hit his head on that every time.
Oh man. And Sean had mentioned when he knew that George was coming up along with myself and Chris that they had that you had vacuumed the floor.
Yep. That was the first time.
Because that floor became our bed for the times that we crashed out.
Oh,
we didn't go to another room. We just on the floor.
So, there's a couple times during that edit. Like I said, I remember Sean like editing on the computer and I was sleeping on the floor behind him. Yeah. And that was just, you're young, what you do back in the day, because you get the passion, you want to do the project, So and it was cool to meet such a great person, it really was. Do you remember the bathroom situation there?
Oh my goodness. Refresh my memory.
Well, George, for whatever reason, George just really never liked to close the bathroom door. And if you walked out of the studio, there was like another little room, like a living room, and then there was a kitchen. And I just remember like walking out and going to the kitchen to get something to drink, and there's George in the bathroom, like totally just there, doors wide open, and he's just like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm good." And I walked out and got a drink, and then like an hour later, Sean went and got a drink, and the same thing happened. And then you guys left for the day, and he was like, "Dude, I got to tell you something." And I was like, "I have to tell you something." And then it was, that we both saw him in the bathroom. It was kind of just ironic, But that was George. He was so like down to earth about everything.
Yeah.
He really was.
So he was agreeable to the the hot temperatures and the rough climate of the editing room he had provided.
Yeah. I mean, he was agreeable to everything. He hung out with us and he gave us suggestions, and he was just agreeable to everything. It was just great working with him. And I mean, we were like, when we edited that, it was like right when quote unquote like non-linear digital editing just came around. So, I mean, it's, 640 by 480 square resolution, not a lot of data transfer. And I remember we had a 2 gigabyte hard drive, and we thought we were like, seriously impressive with a 2 gigabyte hard drive back in the day. It was like one of the first Macs that could actually edit video with a capture card. And it was just, like I said, it was an amazing time. Even if you look like at the graphics that were in there in the edit, that's like pre-After Effects. Like I actually made those graphics in Photoshop and then used I don't know, Macromedia Director or some kind of program to edit frames that I could then send to Sean, and then he would be able to drop them in. So, I mean, it's old school. It's really old school. Definitely.
Well, we're reaching up to our 8:15 cutoff time, but I wanted to give you and JB time for some final thoughts before we wrap up this segment. Just any closing thoughts on Iron City Asskickers? I guess 23 years later.
Yeah, we're getting close, and I remember Scott and Sean so vividly, and he's not joking. It's like these were on tapes. And so we had to digitize those, which now people are, technology is going to change. But at the time, technology was not there to support that. So it was a laborious thing. It was one of the first times he had used nonlinear editing. So the possibilities were endless. And so that's constantly giving George ideas on, well, can we do this? Can we do this? And at the time, it's either Scott or Sean manning the station, doing what he wanted to do. But it was an extraordinary time. And you spend 48 hours straight awake in an editing room trying to complete a project that everybody believes in and everybody wants to do well. Yeah, it created a fellowship at the time. And it was
absolutely
for Scott and Sean, for sure.
Absolutely. And it was really fun to work with. Like I said, it was looking back at it, it was pretty amazing what we pulled off, honestly, with the limited amount of resources that we really had to do it, like the technology wise at the time. But, it doesn't really matter the technology because George's vision was there. Jason's vision was there. Everybody that was on it, and that's really what made the project so incredible. And it's such a delight to look back on. And, George was really ahead of his time on this thing. Like he really was. Like, it's pretty amazing. It really is.
Well, credit to you, JB, for having your finger on the pulse of what was to come as well.
Yeah, it was a great time. It was a great time.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, thank you both for joining us, and we'll be bringing Mark on at the end, one final push for the DVD and VHS sales. But I know I join you in the enthusiasm for this release. We can't wait for everybody to finally have a chance to own it on home video.
Yes, thank you
guys.
Here,
thank you.
Iron City.
That's it.
All right.
ICA.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. See you, Scott.
See you guys.
All right.
Well, great stories. It's great to see that George is, worldwide known as the master of horror, but here he is touching wrestling, which wrestling and horror fans tend to intermix a lot. And seeing George have his hand in that, and especially creating something like we talked about ahead of his time. And I think that's a great time to introduce our special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, our special guest needs no introduction. He is a 6-time world heavyweight champion. You know him as Sid Vicious, Sid Justice, or Psycho Sid. He is one of the most known wrestling figures in the world. His career spans from WCW to the WWF and later WWE. He enjoyed major championship successes and performing in front of international audiences over 4 decades, from the 80s to the 2010s. He has won the WWF World Heavyweight Championship twice, the WCW World Heavyweight Championship twice, and the USWA Unified World Heavyweight Championship twice. In addition to the world title, Sid has held the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship once, among being a member of the Horsemen. During his tenure with WWF and WCW, Sid has headlined multiple pay-per-view events for both organizations, twice main eventing WrestleMania 8 and 13, and along with Starrcade. Sid is here tonight to talk to us about his life in professional wrestling, before professional wrestling, and the transformation of the business, and a little bit about what he's up today. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is our great pleasure here on the Garf Network to introduce Sid Udy.
How you doing, Sid?
Hey, guys.
Hey, Sid. How are you?
Good. Yourself?
Doing well. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you, Sid.
for having me.
Honored to have you on board.
Yes, this is an honor.
And actually, we wanted to start off and give you some time to talk about, you have a new podcast that you just started up. Why don't you tell us about that a little bit?
We did just start. I think we're just about a month or so over being a year. So started with a guy named Rob Bellamy up in, he's from Chatham, Canada. He's the producer of Vicious Circle. Me and him started this, like I said, a little over a year ago. Just to kick around, really just for people who are saying, talking things that aren't true. We used it for that right there to knock a couple of these liars down. Then we're going to use it in the future to promote my book.
Excellent. So you have a book on the way? That's great.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Can't wait. That's awesome. Just going to be about your experiences in the ring, or
it's just about business.
Okay. Excellent.
It's about mind your own business. Okay.
Love it.
Can't wait. Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, Sid, I'd love to talk about some of your career, especially, before getting to the professional world and starting in the amateur circuit. What was it like, especially compared to if you watch the product today, about, your career in amateur wrestling?
Well, Matt, honestly, I didn't have an amateur background. You talk about the independent or the small territories?
Independent, territories program.
Yeah, that you've heard those stories before. That's where there were several territories spread out across the U.S. And they were like, again, Memphis Championship, World Class in Texas. You had a territory in Portland, one in Florida. You had one that I really enjoyed the most was Continental. It was a stretch from Tennessee, Tennessee, Alabama, a little Georgia, a little Florida, sometimes a little bit of Kentucky. And so that was a lot of fun, the small territories. That's where you wasn't really making any money. You were making just enough to say that you were in the business,
Mm-hmm. What did you like most about the independent circuit with the territories?
Well, for me, because I got in the business for a total different reason than everyone else did, purely just for money, or because it was a business to me. But the beginning of the business, those territories, for me, you didn't know anything about jealousy in the beginning. You didn't know that existed. For me, this was fun for me, okay? And then everything was new, and then too, I remember some things that were fun for me. The music in the country at the time wasn't really going that good. And then all of a sudden, about halfway down there, and it really was a lull for me down there in that territory. My manager had just left Bruno. I was sort of by myself for the first time. Then all of a sudden, the music changed to rock and roll, man. And then it was Guns N' Roses, and we were kicking ass and taking names. But the main thing is that no pressure. It was just all fun. For me, too, I was not just naive, but I was just uneducated for the business. I wasn't like a 10-time or a second generation. I didn't know what I didn't know what heat was and blah, blah, blah. It was just, I was lucky, too. I was put in a character called Lord Humongous. I never went off my feet. Again, had this goofy little manager. So it was just working out in the mornings, hanging out, going to, just doing the deal, man, living the dream. And that was, again, you didn't know jealousy. You didn't know that people hated you, just all that stuff, because everything was new. And you think about it, everything that goes with new, guys. If it's not just wrestling, if it's just a new pair of shoes, the smell of new things when you're in a new state. Too, I uprooted and left my family at home. So, you're a little scared and apprehensive. So conquering those fears like that would set me up to be successful later on in the career. So that's something else. I got all the tools and learned a few things there to carry on and be better in other places.
That kind of led into what I was going to ask. How did you get accustomed to the schedule and life on the road, and how many days a year were you on the road?
Well, even the Continental guys, we were. I mean, I don't remember having, the year I was there, not even, maybe. I remember getting to go home for Christmas one time when we had just a couple of days, and right back because Christmas Day was a big day for wrestling back in those days. And I think I got to go home only maybe one other time that year, so we didn't have any days off. And think about WWF, not so much WCW. A lot of times there, we'd actually work twice on Saturdays and Sundays. So you were going. Now, what got me prepared for that, guys, is that one, I think I work a little bit harder than everyone. I learned that from, just a simple life here in Arkansas, working on the farm, being up earlier, being the first one up, and the last to leave. And I'm not saying that jokingly, either, guys. You probably don't know what I'm saying. But when you're on a farm and you're the guy who's in charge of planting the crop, they call him a plant man. You really are. You're there as soon as you can see the mark in the field, and you don't leave till you can't see the mark. And everybody else is already gone, but you. You're the last in the shops, you're the last to service your tractor, and you're the first out to the next day. So things like that, and being able to go, and when I was a kid, guys, I used to work on when we harvest or planting too, I put a lot of lights on my tractor. I would go for 24 hours straight a lot of times through harvest and planting. The rest of the time when you get everything in the ground, you have to, everything's fun there again. You're laid back, watching stuff grow. But again, it's just a schedule I kept as a kid.
Mm-hmm. And you attribute that hard-working attitude directly towards the success that you had in the industry?
I just said that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, about the time that George made Iron City Asskickers, it was 1998, is around the Attitude Era. I guess the NWO had been going, and there was a change in the industry. I think it was also around that time that Vince McMahon had come out with a commercial just announcing that it was an entertainment industry. How did you take that change in the industry? Did you see that as a positive or a negative, or did it affect you at all?
Honestly, I for me in this business, everything has to grow, guys. The wrestling business grows, the music we listen to for sure grows, and music we can sort of guide things by. That's where our vessel in life, what the music is doing. Now, I think we all know what happened for what sparked the wrestling business is and they say they actually give John Candy somewhat credit for wrestling hitting popular. They said it was something he did on Saturday Night Live that at the time everything was down, ratings on everything across the board, and he did something silly where he fell or something, and he also became this overnight sensation. He was now a writer because he was funny on TV, and that was the era of the tits and ass. That's when we see Jerry Springer and all these other things. That's when we hear about Vince Rowe introducing Vince to Jerry Springer. So that's what happened. Also at the beginning, we started doing tapings like in these nightclubs, like at midnight, these things with the go-go dancers and stuff, and everybody said, this will never work. Now they stopped it, but they sort of came back to that. But thing is, guys, I've heard Emmylou Harris talk one time. There was talk about music, how we need change. We never walk in the same river twice, even if we're in the same spot. I don't know if you know that or not. And it's what retro music is about, guys. That's what life is going to, is retro. We want to see past, present, and future. That's what I think the example of that is what we see with the WWE network. Excuse me, I'm so stopped up. My understanding, a lot of the guys on that network do, like myself, do as well, if not better than some of these newer guys, just because I'm more fun to watch. So again, things are retro now, and that's what's great for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, your career spans multiple eras of wrestling. The golden era. You came in the '90s, wrestling Hulk Hogan, and you transcended through the mid '90s, headlining wrestling folks like The Undertaker, and then you go to WCW. How did you approach the changes in the wrestling industry while maintaining your status as one of the biggest bad guys in wrestling?
I'm going to answer this real quick for you, Matt. I'm the one that made the changes in the business. I'm the one that made it cool to be a babyface at heel. And that is as simple as I can give you, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
When you're the one that makes the change in the business, you don't have to talk how it went on. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were there in the ring.
No, I'm the first one to do it, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to be rude to you guys, but you guys don't know who you're talking to. I'm not trying to put myself over here, but as well. But guys, I started the new era of this business where it was okay to be a good guy or a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and what it was is because I worked so hard at all the facets I did in this business, where I paid attention to the little bitty things where even walking to the ring, and I'm sure George Romero could say this, probably relate to me, that you have to take advantage of every little second out there. And so I would find that camera, and I don't know if it's an answer what you're actually looking for. To find the camera walking and leaving, I'd even bring the camera to me in the ring. So again, I'm trying to. What was your answer again? The question again? I guess they called me back here.
No worries.
Well, I mean, I had asked, how you adjusted to the change in the business, and you were the change. So
that was the change. So that's pretty simple. But to get to that change, it took a lot to get there. And not to say this book, but it'll say how I got there in the book. How I was able to do that, guys. Now I didn't do that by myself. By far. Took all the guys I worked with to get there, and all the guys after me and before me. I was in the right place at the right time. I held on to my character so hard and refused to let someone beat it off of me. I had that stain of Johnny Cash, maybe the hint of an interview of Hannibal Lecter, something like that. I just wasn't going to let those things go. And I referred to this before, guys, and Rob could tell you if you guys ever talked to Rob, is that I was on the whipping post there a little bit because I sort of stood up for myself maybe too often. And so, but I worked myself off that whipping post, guys, to where I became that change. And that night in the Madison Square Garden, the biggest venue in the world, is where it happened. And to me, I wouldn't give that for anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How would you say, is there can you point to someone that served as maybe in a mentor role in your career?
No, Eric, this thing is a lot. I talk about this a lot too. I was really lucky to be in the right place at the right time. Even before I got into wrestling, I was so skinny at 185 pounds. I met a buddy of mine, a guy named Randy Pedigo. I won't go into it, but he taught me everything I know about working out. There's a lot of people like that. But I think the answer, Eric, would be Eddie Gilbert. Excuse me. He, again, and you guys probably know more about wrestling than I did when I was Lord Humongous. So if somebody come to me and say, get heat, I didn't know what that was. Really, I did, but I didn't. So when we get to WC, I think Eddie in Continental, but for a brief moment, and then we see he actually brings me into WCW, gives me my break. So that's one reason, but not just that, guys. He says, you know what, Sid, you got a chance to make it in this business. And he knows my problem. I don't really know it. No, I still need learning, teaching. So they put me with a guy named Danny Spivey. At the time, was probably one of the most established heels of this business. Worked in Japan, where you've got to be able to work, again, just established. I'll leave it at that. So we're going to put you with him. He's going to teach you how to work, and you're going to be a singles one day. And that's really was that start. Without that, I don't know. It'd been tough. It'd been harder. I don't know if I would have got there, but when they're lining you up and doing this for you, right, that part of my career right there, pushed me above Sting, Lex, all those guys. Said, here's the green light. If you can take it, go. And that was probably the guy, Eddie Gilbert.
And then how about with promos? Did anybody give you any guidance in that department?
Believe it or not, at first I was just uncomfortable doing promos, and with the Four Horsemen too at that point. And Arn Anderson pulled me aside. He would just say one little thing like, and I'm not saying this what I'd say, but go, I'm tough, or I'm big, just something to get started, Then really what started, guys, is like me and like the Nasty Boys, and I'd have to think of guys like that. It almost become a competition to us about interviews in the interview room. So we knew that would come every day. So then you started getting used to it. And then it really started from there, Mm-hmm. And it's something, guys, too, when I looked at this business, I was going to be as good as I could at every facet of this business where I could reach where I wanted to, and that's to make the most money I could.
Understood.
I know a lot of guys talk today in interviews about, being, they love being a baby face or they really love being a heel. How did you approach when, sometimes you were heel, sometimes you were face? Did you enjoy being one more, or did you just approach them the same way and let the crowd react to what you were doing?
Well, now when I was just a heel, the people would say cheer you. You just had to learn to work that part into your match. But then when I was working as baby one night and as heel the next. Honestly, that took a lot of the fun out of it. I don't like I just see the luxury to that in the beginning. I thought that was really like taking away my character. I'm not taking away my character at all, but diminishing my drawing ability. And that's again what I'm in the business for. I'm not in for this silly shit like that. I'm in to make money. And so when they start doing stuff like that, I'm going, shoot. And I'm on a deal where I have to exceed $500,000 to get a bonus. I can see that not happening. So that's the only thing. I wanted to. I didn't want to flip flop because when you do that, guys, back and forth, eventually you just don't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You had the opportunity to work in films a little bit. You were in Death from Above and River of Darkness. Was that a goal of yours to get into movies? And can you talk about that experience a little bit?
Well, it was always my goal to get it, but after waiting so long, every chance I'd get to do something, business. It wasn't popular for us to do movies, guys. They never wanted us to, So, and I was in a position to be in the main event most of the time. So they said, "You're main event," and right then the money was for me wrestling. And I said again, this was about money. So I said, I don't have time to take off and I get paid to go chase something I don't know if I could even do. But I knew what I wanted to do, and that was really have fun with it in the independent circuit. And that's what has been more fun to me than anything.
Mm-hmm.
In the indie movies.
Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, what do you think was your biggest contribution to the business that folks remember you for?
Honestly, I think the main thing is this: when people watched me, they really believed what I was doing. They said he's really kicking that guy. I'm really scared of that guy. I wanted them to believe the word believe. I really believe they believed what I was doing was real. That was it. When that came through your interviews, not just your physical actions, but when I'm talking to someone, when I have someone say, "Man, you just talking to me, scared the shit out of me," or and when I say beat someone like Lawrence Taylor or Vinny Pazienza, they're like, "Man, you're the meanest guy in the world." And I said, "Whoa, I love that," And so I really did my job,
Was there a particular opponent that you just gelled with in the ring that just your work styles just work together perfectly?
Well, there's a bunch of it that happens with guys, but the one that this is sort of old news, but the guy that this is why I say this guy the most, and I've never said this before, so I'll say it like this. It's a new answer for that question. This is the first. You guys are getting the first.
An exclusive.
It was Bam Bam Bigelow, and it just came to me. It's not because you guys are smart or anything. I was listening to the beginning of the show. Maybe being so bored gave me this, okay? So listen, working with Bam Bam was great. They had great psychology and everything, but the difference was this, guys, he was better than me, really. As far as a ring technician, a psychologist, and every time you can work with someone who's better than you, you become better too. And so I did become better. And guys, when I said that reference to the whipping post, he's the one that got me off the whipping post because it went from Sid can't really work to where Sid's one of the best workers. Look at the people; they're going crazy. You know what I mean? Bam Bam is again because one, he was great to work with, and second, because he was better than I was, and I can't say that about anyone else.
Mm-hmm. And looking back, do you have a favorite run that you had? Maybe one of your title runs, or just maybe a
Not really,
particular...
guys. Not really. I honestly, I never carried the title with me. It was just too much weight in my bag. I didn't care about titles. That was just stupid. And I was told I never needed one, so I was really insulted that they gave me one. And just again, belts. And now the one time it meant something when I was one time babyface and once heel. That helped me draw, okay? Because then I could work with anyone and draw. You know what I mean? That was successful. So as far as success drawing wise, that was one of them right there. When you're walking in and everything's full every night, twice on Saturdays and Sundays, you've done your job.
Nice. When you had gone back to WWE for one of their special Raws, what did you notice about one of the biggest any changes in the business from when you had been active in the ring full time?
Well, other than they just had better food. It's still just a carnival, pretty much just a behind the scenes carnival. The thing that really took away was that the guys didn't seem to be having as much fun in the locker room. It was like so much stress, so much, I don't know. But for the instances, is like working with Heath Slater. He had this. It wasn't a bad interview, but it wasn't great. And he was showing it to me. He says, "Man, look at this right here." And I forget what it was, but he wanted to make it. And actually, he asked me, and I saw it too. It was just one little change there. Could have made it much better. He said, "Man, I'd like to do that." I said, "Dude, it's live TV. Do it anyway." That's what I would have done. And he said, "No, I don't want to get in trouble." Guys, that's what's wrong there. I'm not expecting y'all to understand this, but it's really this simple. When you line 2 people or 5 or 6 people up in a line and go, "I want you all to race, but I want you all to only race to this line. I want you all to stop right there." That doesn't allow anyone to run past and become Sid Vicious, okay? So even Heath Slater is someone low on the totem pole. If they would just let him go with an interview, maybe, or go with a style that he thinks works. Not that it's working. I don't think it's a big deal. But here's an example, Cody Rhodes, okay? Not that this is working, but he has got opposition to Vince just on that principle alone, that he feels like he should have some type of freedom to use his character. So I think he's winning at the moment on that, So that tells you, I think that suggests, anyway, doesn't tell you anything, suggests what I'm saying is true. So anyone like Cody Rhodes, I don't know him, but he's not Hulk Hogan. He's not even, what's the guy's name? I'll think in a minute. Jay Leno looking guy. Anyway, the guy that just left. Anyway, he's you know what I'm talking about, that guy's oversized midget.
Who just joined AEW? Big Show?
John Cena.
John Cena.
Yeah, like John Cena. He's not even John Cena, guys, but he's top of the territory over there because they allowed him to have some type of, back in the days when we did our interviews, we did them on our own. You either were successful or you weren't. Some guys got help, but not much.
Did you feel like the promo portion came naturally to you? It just kind of amplified your personality?
Right. Afterwards, I knew that was probably the greater side of myself.
Would you ever consider having any desire to maybe serve in kind of a mentorship role?
You know what? To me, guys, I don't have time to be a mentor. If someone wants to learn, how to really succeed and get over, and they had someone that actually could do that, it might be worth it to do that. And I'm not being a jerk. I wouldn't want to say that I would be there with a classroom of young kids that, they're just trying to rip off for their $4,500 for their wrestling fee. But if they had someone said, "You know what? We got a couple guys, we got maybe 3 or 4 big guys that might have potential to get over. Could you help them out a little bit?" But it would only have to be in a serious content. I don't like doing anything half-assed. They know, everyone knows that.
Nice. No, I mean,
thing is this, real quick, Eric, not to cut you off, but I could do this, and I've done it a million times with just little Joe Bros up here in northern Arkansas, these local event shows. I can almost guarantee someone to almost get over as well as I did. Because to me, that's more challenging, and that would be more satisfying to me because it was too easy to do it myself. But if I could take someone and achieve that, that would be, to me, it would be a great personal goal.
Nice. No, I mean, as a kid growing up watching you were the monster heel that I loved to hate, and I knew you were gonna kick someone's ass in the ring that I liked, and you definitely brought the entertainment factor. You brought the intensity. I know with the wrestling fans that I talked to and growing up, you always come up. So I know you succeeded in every aspect of the business. And, you know, it's been a great honor talking to you and hearing you, because I could just hear the intensity coming through, and it's like, wow, he's bringing it. And yeah, I love it. I'm loving it. I'm just
Guys, I wake up 3 a.m. like this, you know. This is me all day long, man. Listen, when the guys, you ever wake up in the morning, look over, it's 4:30. So, and I know what I'm doing. My shins are sweating at 4:30, and you guys think, wow, that's what's going on right now. And you're part of the world. The earth is sitting still. Okay, I'm out here, and the earth's revolving. I've got my foot off the curb, singing a song that sounds retro, and guys, this is what it is. I don't want life to be 1 and 1 is 2. I want life to be 1 and 1 is 3 because it's more fun, right?
Yep.
We could all walk around all day and do the same old thing.
No, I love that approach, and I love that intensity. I really do. And that's a great way to look at it. It sounds like you go out and you seize every day and you make the most of it. And I think that's something we all need to go and do and remember in our lives, to not let life pass us by, but go out and get it.
No. Get it, go out to get it. And then relax sometimes too, but go out and get it when you got a chance to get it.
Yeah. And then sit back and enjoy the rewards of your hard work.
That's it, guys.
No. Well, Sid, I really do want to thank you tonight. It has been an absolute honor to talk to you as a fan. Thank you for everything you've done in the ring. Thank you for the legacy and the hard work and the memories. Again, the podcast is The Vicious Circle, and it's on
Yes,
iTunes.
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm just listening.
I have subscribed to it, so I have a backlog of episodes to go listen to. So I'm enjoying it so far, and thank you very much for joining us here tonight on the Garf Network.
Well,
Thank you,
Eric
Sid.
and Matt, thank you for having me. And anytime you guys want to come on the Vicious Circle and talk wrestling, you're welcome to.
Oh, I would love that.
Thank you, Sid.
All right.
Thank you,
Good night,
Sid.
everyone.
Take care.
All right. Good night. Whoa, that was amazing.
Yeah. Ooh, I definitely wouldn't want to meet him in the ring.
Well, yeah, that's for
sure. I mean, he brings it. That's fantastic. I absolutely love that. That was fun. Whew.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if he was in character or not, but I was intimidated.
No. So, I was like, okay. And I'll tell you what, just sitting there, I kind of felt like a Mean Gene type person, and just you know, I just had that feeling, and just letting him run with it. I could listen to those stories that he had, you know, for a while. So I'm really enjoying that. I'm going to enjoy that podcast.
Yeah, I know. And you and I are both big fans of wrestling, many wrestling podcasts. So I'm definitely gonna have to add that one into the mix.
Yes.
We're gonna come out. We're gonna bring back Mark Ricci for some closing remarks. Looks like he dropped out of the green room here for a second. Maybe we'll bring on Ben Rubin from the archive for a second.
Yeah.
What's going on, Ben?
Hey guys, how are y'all?
Pretty good.
So yeah, thanks for having me on. This is really fun. This is great to hear this story about this project. Of course, we have the Romero archive at the University of Pittsburgh Library System, and I am lucky enough to be the curator for it and the collections coordinator for horror. And we were able to use that as this foundation to build on a really first of its kind collection devoted to horror and acknowledging its social and cultural significance. And it's really great with Cryptic Pictures. They were actually the first group to donate to the archive after Romero, and the full archive of their production of Mortal Remains. So it's really great to, continue to work with them, and, that they brought this project kind of back from the grave, right? This lost project. When I was working through the Romero stuff, there's over 100 unproduced projects represented. And so we really see all these stories that George wanted to tell that, we didn't hear. And, there was this one, folder, and it had a fax from Jason about, I talked to Richard Matheson, and by the way, here's some stuff about wrestling. And there's a rough early outline kind of script of the then called the George Romero's Untitled Wrestling Project. So we thought this was going to be another unproduced project, and I got a message from Christian, and he's like, "Do you have anything about the wrestling thing?" And like, we do, not much. And then finding out that this wasn't an unproduced project; it was a lost project. So I'm just so excited that they were able to figure out a way to bring this back and put this out so that people can see it. And that's exactly what we want from an archive, right? Is to shed new light on these artists that we revere and know so much about, but then finding out that there's all these other stories that were kind of lost. So it's fantastic that Cryptic was able to do this, and that tonight was able to be organized to really tell these stories and get a better picture of what happened here in the late 90s with this pilot for a show that apparently something got made. So it's not a completely unrealized project, and it's just incredible. It's been kind of floating around and apparently lost for 20 plus years. So we're really excited that all of the work that Cryptic did to uncover this will be deposited and grow their own archive, but will then also help further, illuminate Romero's archive as well.
Looks like we got Mark back here. Hey, Mark, we lost you for a minute there.
Yeah, well, no, Sid. I'm serious. He leaned forward, pushed the button, and the next thing I knew, I was like, "What? I'm supposed to be on next. What the heck is going on?"
You took a Sid power bomb and you lived to talk about it.
Boom! Power drive.
Hey, Mark, do you want to introduce Mike so I don't butcher his last name, please?
Yes, Mike Treblecock is going to be Treblecock is going to be joining us. He's a musician and film composer. We're going to talk about that in a minute. While you're bringing him on, I want to thank Ben for filling in my gaps. Yeah. Jeez, I was supposed to introduce you, Ben, and I'm serious. He leaned forward, pushed the button, and I was like, "What the?" He knocked me out of the ring. All right. Anyway,
well, you have to look out. Ben's ready for prime time. He's got a
ready
few,
for you, Mark.
He's got a few shows under his belt now. So he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, friend of the show, Ben Rubin. We could listen to Ben talk a lot. We enjoy it.
I'll be tuning in on Tuesday for Women in Horror, actually.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah, we'll also be doing a lot of events with Pitt for Women in Horror, including a really cool event with Kathy Koja and Maurice Meyer this coming Tuesday. So
fantastic.
Yeah, I'm excited for those.
Fantastic. Yeah. Go ahead and bring Mike on. We're going to get to him in just a second. And before I kind of go into an official introduction for Mike, hey, Mike. I'm going to have you go ahead and ready the promo for the VHS. Sure. We also have, on top of the DVD, we have a collectible vintage VHS edition of Iron City Asskickers, priced at $24.40, which is in honor of George's birthday. So if you were interested in that, you can get that, of course, at crypticpictures.com. Just go ahead and go to our website and click on the Iron City Asskickers logo at the top. But we have a promo for that, for those of you that haven't seen it, for that VHS that I'll let Eric go ahead and run for you right now.
Here it comes. Every wrestling fan's dream come true. This limited collector's edition video is the ultimate videotape, now available on video cassette. You won't want to miss a minute of this historic first-class competition. Reserve your ringside seat by ordering this action-packed video cassette today.
I have to commend you on the commentary. I mean, that's an amazing narration, Mark.
I thought that captured the essence of Iron City Asskickers.
Yeah.
So before we head back to Ben, and Ben, I still have a question or two for you coming up here. I'd like to introduce everybody to Mike Treblecock, who was kind of like a spearhead in this whole operation. The day after the WGN show in July, when I flippantly announced that we were going to distribute this without any knowledge of how I was going to do it, or where the original press was even, I got a Facebook message from Mike, who said, "Hey, I'm a big Romero fan. If you need any music for the project, let me know." And I thought, well, all the music was kind of already in there. And then I realized as we were putting together the final end credits that JB and George never added any sort of final credits, which made it a little difficult to find everybody that was involved by name. Thank goodness that JB kept in touch with a lot of them. And that's primarily, that's the George Romero family there working at its finest. But Mike contacts me and says, "Hey, I got a song called Blade of Fury that I recorded with my band Cemetery Spawn, and I think it would be perfect if you needed a song for the end credits or for the video or what have you." And what caught me about Mike's pitch was not that he was contacting me to say, "Hey, I got this, song that you guys can use," but that in his pitch, he mentioned that he worked or did the music for, I should say, George Romero's Night of the Living Dead Live, the theatrical play, which George co-produced with John Russo and Russ Streiner. And I wanted to ask Mike, do you have any stories from that experience, working with George or John or Russ?
Well, I would say, you can hear me okay?
Oh,
as
yeah.
everyone says at the beginning of these things. I would say that every time George would speak to me, I was surprised for some reason, because being a huge fan forever and, just being in a room with him, and he'll just say, "Well, what are the guys doing now?" and stuff, and it's something I wasn't expecting, that he'd just be a regular, nice guy. And he always was. And so I guess that's sort of a general story. But so, the first time he saw the play, I was sitting in front of him as the composer. I was listening and sort of listening to him laughing behind me, or, whatever his interjections were, so it was great working with him, and an amazing experience. That's it. And I was lucky. I did hear you say that you might have to replace the music. You weren't sure about the music, sort of thing. So I thought, I got something right here.
You were quick.
I was quick.
You were quick, because you were like the 5th or 6th email I got that day. All the emails prior to yours were all, "Where do I buy a copy?" And I was like, oh my gosh, like people actually want a copy of this darn thing. What am I going to do?
Yeah, well,
I was just joking.
I wanted a free one, so I thought I should get it.
Get involved. That's the best way. We are going to be giving complimentary copies to all of our cast and crew for everybody that shows up tonight. So Christian, stop texting me. We're going to do it. I promise. Ben will get a copy too, his own copy, not the archive copy.
Yeah.
So before I bounce back to Ben real quick, Mike, I wanted to ask you, you worked with the wrestling contingent on another project, so to speak. Do you recall your work on Wrestle Massacre?
Wrestle Massacre. Yes. There's wrestling has come in and out of my life. I mean, other than, the 80s and 90s. Lately, I did the music for, or I did a song for Wrestle Massacre, which was written and directed by Brad Twigg, who I wrote Blade of Fury from originally. And, sometimes indie films, all that remains of them is the song sometimes, because that's as far as they get. But I mean, it could still get off the ground. Who knows? But so Brad Twigg was involved in both things. So I asked him, permission if I could use it and all that stuff. And so that was very nice of him as well. The other, I did some music for Vampiro. I don't know if you're familiar with Vampiro, the fall and rise of Vampiro. I did some music for that documentary. And I did some music for Robert Bellamy, who does the podcast with Sid. So that's how that connection came about. I did music for the Hitman. And I did something else for I did the theme for the podcast, of course, which is something called Unleash the Giants. And I thought it was fitting. So it's been a big, great connection all around. That a bit of a convoluted story, but
no. I will say this, that and everyone should know this. If it wasn't for Mike, Matt, Eric, Sid would never have been with us tonight. I put out an all call to, does anybody know any wrestlers? And Mike gets back to me. First one to respond. Hey,
I got a wrestler right here.
I got a wrestler, Sid Udy. I don't know if you want. And I was like, you got what? Wait a minute. Hold on. Time out. What are you talking about? And so that was huge for us. God bless you, Mike, for the song and connecting us with Sid and all your contributions thus far. Now, Ben,
to be a part of it. Thank you so much.
And we're, it's all part of the family here, all part of the family, and we're happy to keep it in the family. Now, Ben, because I got body slammed out of the ring, you have kind of already covered everything with regards to the archives and our donation of this project to the archives. But, we have a lot of Romero fans watching. Is it possible that you could maybe go into some detail about any other upcoming events that folks may be interested in? Give a nice plug for what you guys are doing over there.
Sure, thanks. So we've got several events coming up in the next few weeks, actually, that are more on horror studies more broadly, so not necessarily about Romero, but are all centered around women in horror. And we've got a grant to help support this and really trying to, highlight and recognize the outsized impact that women have played in the genre that we love. And so next week we will be doing a conversation and a reading with writers Kathy Koja and Maurice Meyer. The following week on March 16th, so that'll be March 9th, March 16th, we will be with groundbreaking horror poet Linda Addison. And then on April 6th, we'll be with Michelle Lane and Jewel Gomez. And Jewel Gomez is also a legend in the horror writing. So all really exciting and talking about different aspects of their work and a lot of discussions too about the sort of relationships that they've forged with each other as they've become writers. So I'll put a link to see if that can get posted by our host.
That'd be great. Yeah.
We got
so and then we just did a couple weeks ago a big talk about the archive and got to reveal some of the cool things that we found within the Romero archive, and there's so much stuff that we could continue to hold webinars about this. So I think we need to plan the next one. This sort of finding lost projects might could be something, because there's now 3 that we know of, right? So the amusement park, which of course the GARF just announced will be coming out on Shudder, and that was kind of unearthed as they were pulling the materials together. There's this project that we didn't even discover, but Mark did, so that's awesome. And then for those that did attend our webinar a couple weeks ago, we found the unproduced project, Jacaranda Joe, that he made down in Florida, and it was a 17-minute kind of student film with some students down there. So it's really cool to know that he has all these unproduced projects, but that some of these actually came about and that there's more to the stories he was telling than the 15 or so 17 movies that we already knew.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm always eager for anything. If you come across anything else that needs distribution, do let us know. We'll be happy to coordinate. All you Romero Nation, Romero Knights, you heard it first from the University of Pittsburgh Horror Studies Collection Coordinator, Ben Rubin. So folks, listen, it's already 9 o'clock, so I'm going to wrap up real quick here. A night like tonight doesn't happen without a lot of involvement from a lot of people. We'd like to thank the GARF Network. We'd like to thank our hosts, Matt and Eric. I'd like to thank you, Ben, for coming on. You, Mike, for joining us. I'd like to thank all of the cast and crew for coming on and sharing their stories. A big special thank you to Jeff Whitehead, Ramona Striner, and the entire GARF organization, with special thanks to Suze Romero and Colin Corcoran, the GARF Global Liaison. We thank you all. And of course, a big, big monster slam thank you to the one, the only Sid Vicious, you the man, and his agent, representative, I should say, Robert Bellamy, for coordinating everything with us. I'd also like to put out a big special thank you to Sean Tiedemann. Sean actually found the master tapes for this. So the DVD is going to be top quality. Remember, this was created, and before they were discussing whether it was on 1/4 inch, it was actually the cameras that I provided for Chris and I, they were on high 8. So that was probably the deck that they had to get, and they weren't common decks to find, the high 8 decks. 3/4 inch was probably a lot easier to find back then. But Sean was able to find it. When he sent me the original file, it was like 8 gigabytes for like 22 minutes. I was like, this won't even fit on a DVD, man, because it was in its original raw MPEG format, long before compression was a thing.
Those would make a great addition to the archive too. Those masters.
we will. I'll be speaking to Sean about that. We'll be getting everything that you need, man. I promise.
Yeah.
I promise. We'd also like to thank all the advertisers. We just got a nice big push from the Pittsburgh Tribune today. God bless Rob Owen over there. We'd like to thank Mike Joy over at Marketing Macabre, Damon over at Slasher, Lola Bradbury from Lola Talks Talking, and everybody over at Image 987. Of course. The 2 big thank yous go out to the Bareford brothers, Christian and JB, for trusting Cryptic Pictures with this project, with their IP, and we thank you guys so much for that. And of course, last but never least, I have to thank my partner in crime, the one, the only Christian Stavrakis, who not only did the VHS and DVD artwork, slipcovers for us, but if it wasn't for Christian, I never would have been involved in this project. I'll never forget that call. Hey, Mark, want to work with George Romero? And that was, 23 some years ago. So that's it for tonight, folks. Sorry, we're 2 minutes over. Thank you all so much for joining us. God bless everybody. Stay safe, stay positive, test negative. You know the routine. We'll talk to you guys later.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys.